Welcome back to DukascopyTv. Now, in a time when even the safe havens are no longer considered safe, investors are becoming more risk averse. Joining me today to discuss the do's and don'ts in money management is James Poole, financial consultant at Finsbury International. James, thank you very much for joining me.
Not at all.
Now, obviously there is a thin line between risk and reward when it comes to investment. What, in your opinion, is the secret to getting that balance just right?
Well, I believe and always have believed in the last 25 years of my career that communication is everything. And by that I mean in-depth questioning of the client and getting the details with regard to how they feel about their assets and also how they wish to invest them in the future. From there you can then design the portfolio or the asset management according to what they need. And the other aspect to that is constant communication and review of where the portfolio is going and how it's performing.
Now, for many, the most difficult part of investment is portfolio management, as you've just mentioned there. Value for money is imperative always, but even more so in these economical times. What would you say is to make sure that the client can get the best customer service? What should they do?
It's, in my view, and it's again has always been my view, that the client needs to consult a genuinely independent advisor. Now, whether that's to do with pension planning or whether it's to do with portfolio management or any aspect of their financial planning needs, it's vital that they talk to a genuinely independent advisor. And by that I mean someone that is not affiliated to one financial institution or one financial provider. Ultimately, the client needs to build trust, and that also is a very big aspect to how I feel the business should be conducted.
Now, investment options, you know, it's such a broad spectrum out there, whether it's property, cash, commodities, you name it, basically. Do you think there is a so-called safe option at the moment, or is investment really as individual as the person who's choosing it?
I think as we've become too well aware in the last 3 years, certainly since the debacle of 2008, there is nothing that people can invest in that is 100% safe. There's always been a view that banks certainly were 100% safe, and unless the government had stepped in at the time, then obviously that wouldn't have been the case. The most important aspect to a client situation, as I said before, is their attitude to risk and reward and their investment profile. Their currency of choice is very important. Also their time horizon, which is something that again you need to look into in depth with the client prior to recommending or putting any type of investment or asset management in place. So I think in today's uncertain times, and certainly economically uncomfortable times for many people, it's more important than it's ever been for people to understand, and the advisor to understand the client and where they are trying to get to for the future and what aspirations and objectives they have for the assets they're investing. That is the very first step. But I think that's one of the ways of making sure that you don't overstep the mark as regards where the client would like to try and be in relation to their stated risk-reward profile. That has to be maintained, and that's, I believe, the way to do it.
As we mentioned, difficult economical times. People are struggling just to get by. They're not really, never mind even sort of thinking ahead of the future. With regards to pensions, as you mentioned, how important is it that people start thinking now about these things? The difference in a couple of years can make a huge difference in terms of,
absolutely,
you know, the enjoyment of life later on. But just how important is this sort of forward thinking at this point?
I would suggest that in today's, again, uncertain economic times, retirement planning is probably as important as any other aspect of financial planning for the future. And anything that a client can do or can be advised to do with regard to investing money or saving money specifically allocated for retirement at this time is better than doing nothing. Therefore, the more you can do more early, there is a chance, obviously, you have to be careful that you don't actually as far as budgeting is concerned, put yourself in a difficult situation, but there is always, I believe, in many circumstances, a certain amount of savings that can be put away for the future and earmarked specifically for retirement. I mean, that goes hand in hand with all of the other aspects of financial planning. Of course it does, and it has to be taken into account. But the earlier you start, the better, because governments are not affording it these days, as we know. They are not able to cater for the ordinary person in the street any longer in a viable way. Therefore, anything we can do as individuals as quickly as possible is advisable.
So it's a matter of sort of taking matters into your own hands, do you think?
Absolutely, even more than it ever has been. I think what's happened in the past is that we've become used to falling back on the state. That is no longer the situation, and I think we're all very well aware of that, more and more so day by day. So I think the onus now is definitely on the individual to take genuinely independent advice as to how they should be planning their future. And a very large part of that, of course, is 20, 30, 40 years down the line, depending on the age of the client. There's no doubt about that.
James, thank you very much for your insights today and for coming into the studio and joining us. Thank you.
Not at all.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Now, that's all we have time for at the moment, but do click back to DukascopyTv for more interviews and news. Thank you. Goodbye.